The legends get the statues. The legends get the Hall of Fame speeches. The legends get the tribute concerts on their birthday and the documentaries and the Grammy Lifetime Achievement moments where everybody in the room stands up. But there are 12 names on this list, 12 voices that never got any of that. And not because they weren't good enough. In some cases, they were better. Their range was wider. Their story was more devastating. Their body of work was just as deep. And still, history skipped right past them. This is not about 12 singers who almost made it. This is about 12 who already had it and got erased anyway. Let's count them down. Number 12, Freddie Jackson. Here's the thing about 1985. That was the year one R&B singer sat at the top of the Billboard R&B chart, produced more top 10 R&B singles from a debut album than almost anyone in memory, and dominated urban radio from spring to winter. And you probably can't name him right now without thinking hard about it. His name was Freddie Jackson. Born in Harlem, gospel trained from the time he was old enough to carry a note. He came up singing at the White Rock Baptist Church, then worked the New York nightclub circuit for years. Backing singer, supporting act, paying his dues with his whole chest. He was that good that Melba Moore saw him perform in a club in 1981 and hired him on the spot, but Freddie still wasn't the main event. Not yet. Then 1985 happened. His debut album, Rock Me Tonight, came out in April and hit different. You Are My Lady went to number 1 on R&B. Rock Me Tonight went to number 1 on R&B and stayed there for 6 weeks straight. It was the top-selling R&B single of the entire year. The whole album sat at the top of the R&B album chart for 14 weeks. 4 top 10 R&B singles from one debut album. That kind of run doesn't happen by accident. And if you've ever watched music work the way it's supposed to, you know what usually comes next. The Grammy nomination, the coronation moment, the industry saying, "You're one of us now," and Freddie got that nomination. Best New Artist, 1986 Grammys. He walked into that room after one of the most dominant debut years any R&B artist had ever delivered. He lost to Sade. And I want to be fair here. Sade is a legend. No question about that. But Sade's debut came out in 1984. Freddie owned 1985. That room rewarded the softer, safer choice, and Freddie Jackson spent the rest of his career trying to get back to that moment, releasing solid music to devoted R&B fans who never forgot him, but never quite cracking the mainstream ceiling again. You've heard Rock Me Tonight, maybe at a wedding reception, maybe in your parents' house on a Sunday morning, maybe on a late night drive when somebody hit a playlist from the right era. You felt something when you heard it, that warm, deep Harlem church voice sitting inside a groove that makes you lean back in your seat without deciding to. That wasn't just a hit. That was a voice that outplayed the room. And the room never properly said, "Thank you." Number 11, Melba Moore. Step by step. Before she had number 1 R&B hits, before she filled major concert halls, before she became the first woman in history to perform a non-operatic solo concert at New York City's Metropolitan Opera House, Melba Moore won a Tony Award on Broadway. That was just the beginning of the part where things got complicated. Together, we can make... Born Beatrice Melba Hill in New York City in 1945, her mother was a singer, a professional one, with a number 1 R&B hit of her own from 1943. Her father ran one of Harlem's most famous jazz clubs. Music was in her blood. her bones, and her childhood. She won the Tony in 1970 for Pearly, and the following year she received a Grammy nomination for Best New Artist. She had her own television variety show. She was operating at the highest level of entertainment in America. And then she made a decision that nearly cost her everything. She chose to go all in on R&B, put Broadway behind her, put the variety show behind her, bet everything on the music. And for over a decade, she quietly ran up one of the most consistent hit streaks in the genre. This Is It, Love's Coming at You, Keeping My Lover Satisfied, Read My Lips, 4 Grammy nominations. In 1986, she finally had 2 #1 R and B records in a single year, Fallin', and a duet with Freddie Jackson called A Little Bit More. She was building something real. But here's what was happening behind the scenes the whole time. Her husband, Charles Huggins, was managing her career. 15 years together, their production company, their label operations, their entire professional infrastructure built side by side. And in 1991, he walked out abruptly, completely. And when he left, the financial foundation went with him. She went from being one of the most accomplished women in American entertainment to fighting legal battles and financial crisis simultaneously. And the story doesn't soften from there, because Huggins later sued Melba for defamation. She had spoken publicly about what she described as economic abuse during their marriage, and instead of an industry rallying around one of its own, most of the room stayed quiet. Down, no matter where it's the same world that handed her 4 Grammy nominations had very little to offer when she actually needed support. Melba Moore has a Tony Award, 4 Grammy nominations, 2 #1 R and B hits. She was the first female pop artist to perform non-operatically at the Met. And she managed the career of Freddie Jackson, the man at number 12 on this very list. She did all of that, and she is primarily remembered as a footnote. If you know somebody who grew up in the real era of R&B, ask them about Melba Moore and watch their face. That recognition that crosses it, that's the real record. Real talk. Only 9% of you are subscribed. That hurts. We're spending hours digging through archives, fact-checking every detail, bringing these stories back to life. And if you're watching this far, you clearly care. So hit subscribe. It's free and takes 2 seconds. Now, to my subscribers, barely any of you have joined the membership. And honestly, that stings even more. You know the work we put in. You keep coming back. If these videos have ever made you feel something, if this music means something to you, join the membership. It's 1 coffee a month, and it's the only way we keep this going. Let's build this together. All right, back to it. Number 10, Ann Peebles. John Lennon had a list, his personal mental list of the greatest songs ever made. And near the very top of that list was a song by a woman whose name most people today couldn't tell you without looking it up. John Lennon said her song was the best song ever written. Not one of the best, the best. Let's talk about Ann Peebles. Ann Peebles was a Memphis soul singer working out of High Records in the early 1970s. And if that address sounds familiar, that's the same label, the same legendary producer Willie Mitchell, the same high rhythm section that made Al Green a legend. Ann Peebles was recording in that same building with that same band under those same production hands. Her voice was just as powerful. Her writing was just as sharp. Her performances were just as deep. But when history sat down to write the chapter on High Records, it wrote Al Green's name in enormous letters and Ann Peebles' name in the margins. Here's what I want you to do. Reach out, touch somebody. In 1973, she sat down with her partner Don Bryant and a radio DJ friend named Bernie Miller and wrote a song from a throwaway comment. It was raining outside and she said it out loud. "I can't stand this rain." And Don said, "That's a song." They sat down right there and finished it the same night. Rain, rain. "I Can't Stand the Rain" reached number 6 on the R&B chart and number 38 on the pop chart. Not huge by legendary standards, but that song didn't die. John Lennon heard it and told people around him it was the best song ever written. It was ranked number 197 on Rolling Stone's 500 Greatest Songs of All Time, one of the few entries from a woman in the soul genre. And then in 1997, Missy Elliott heard it, sampled that signature electronic timbal intro, and built "The Rain, Super Duper Fly" from its bones. An entirely new generation grew up feeling Ann Peebles' groove without ever knowing her name. And here's what lands hardest about this story. Missy Elliott became an icon, rightfully so. The original, Ann Peebles, walked away from the music industry after High Records closed in 1979 and chose her family and her private life over the spotlight. Her producer, Willie Mitchell, said of her later, "She was the girl with the big voice who could have really gone further." Coming from the man who made Al Green, that sentence is one of the most devastating understatements in the entire history of R&B. If you've ever heard "I Can't Stand the Rain" at a family gathering on an old record your parents owned, in a playlist somebody's grandmother assembled, you heard one of the best songs ever recorded, in the words of one of the most famous musicians who ever lived. And the woman who wrote it, sang it, lived it. Most people couldn't pick her out of a photograph. Drop her name in the comments if you knew her before today. Number 9, Leon Haywood. You know the song. You've heard it everywhere. The cookout, the block party, rolling out of a car at a stoplight, at the party when the playlist finally got to the right era. Nothing But a G Thing, Dr. Dre or Snoop Dogg, 1992. That smooth, low West Coast groove that defined a generation of hip-hop and made the word G-Funk mean something specific. But here's the part you might not know. That groove came from somewhere, from someone, and the man it came from spent most of his life not getting credit for what he built. Leon Haywood was born in Houston, Texas in 1942, and before he was a recording artist, he was a pianist, specifically the pianist in Sam Cooke's touring band. Think about what that means for a moment. He was on that bandstand night after night, playing behind one of the greatest voices in American music, feeling those crowds, understanding at a molecular level what made a groove make people move, what made a room hold its breath, what made a song land. And when Sam Cooke died in December 1964, Leon kept going, recording, writing, producing, building his own catalog. In 1975, he wrote and produced "I Want to Do Something Freaky to You." It reached number 7 on the R&B chart and number 15 on the pop chart. And it had this particular thing, this slow, low simmering, rolling bass and piano combination that sat in a groove nobody else had found yet. An unhurried thing, like music that had nowhere to be and knew exactly where it was going. It was about 17 years ahead of its time. Because in 1992, Dr. Dre was building the Chronic, and then he was searching for a sound that captured something specific, something warm, West Coast, cinematic, and grown. And he found Leon Haywood's 1975 groove. He built nothing but a G thang from that foundation, added the synth line, brought in Snoop Dogg, and released a record that changed hip-hop history. That song launched careers, established a genre, and became one of the most played records of the decade. Leon Haywood's musical vocabulary was at the center of all of it. He was in the liner notes, his name appeared in the sample credits, but he wasn't in the conversation when people talked about what made that era of hip-hop so powerful. He was also later sampled by 50 Cent, by Aaliyah, by over 70 other artists across hip-hop and R&B history. The groove he found in a Houston studio in 1975 fed generations of music he never got to take credit for. Leon Haywood died in April 2016 at age 74. And even his obituary led with Dre's record, not his. If you've ever moved to nothing but a G thang at a party, in your car, anywhere at all, you were moving to a black man from Houston who played piano for Sam Cooke and found the groove 3 decades before it was famous, he just never got the marquee. Number 8, Lenny Williams.
It's true, 'cause I love.
There is a moment in 'Cause I Love You, and if you know the song, you already know exactly which moment, where Lenny Williams stops singing and starts pleading. His voice drops out of melody and into something rawer than that, something you don't perform, something you just have.
You girl, if it's in.
And it doesn't matter what age you are, or whether you've ever been through a real heartbreak, or whether you even knew this record existed before today. When that moment comes through the speakers, you feel it in your chest every single time. Lenny Williams was born in Little Rock, Arkansas in 1945, raised in Oakland. He started singing in church, won local talent contests, recorded early singles for Fantasy Records, and in 1972, he stepped into a situation that most vocalists spend their whole life chasing. He became the lead singer of Tower of Power.
I knocked on the door, but still my knocks went unanswered.
One of the hardest hitting, most technically accomplished soul funk bands in America. So, very hard to go. What is hip? 3 milestone albums that are still studied by musicians today. Lenny's voice was the emotional center of all of it. But Tower of Power never made Lenny Williams a household name. When he left the group in 1975 to go solo, the question was whether the wider R&B world was ready for what he was actually capable of. And then in 1978, he recorded 'Cause I Love You for his Spark of Love album. And that performance, particularly the moments when the song breaks down into something half spoken, half screamed, it's half confessed, became one of the most emotionally devastating vocal deliveries in the entire history of R&B music.
I'm thinking of you, trying to be.
And then, decades later, Kanye West was building overnight celebrity with rapper Twista, and he went looking for a sample. Something with depth, something real, something that felt like it cost the person who made it something to make it. He went looking through decades of soul and R&B, and the answer was Lenny Williams.
But I want only.
Kanye sampled 'Cause I Love You for that record. And Lenny Williams, who had laid that groove down in a studio in 1978, received 2 royalty checks totaling nearly $190,000. He described it as planting a seed and watching it grow into something decades later.
I found you. I just love.
What I keep coming back to in that story is what Kanye's Choice says. With all of the music that exists, with all of the resources to find anything, he went looking for genuine emotional weight, and the answer was Lenny Williams. Not the obvious choice, not the commercially safe choice. The real thing, because real things don't expire. Whether you know every Tower of Power record by heart or you just heard Overnight Celebrity on the radio in 2004 and wondered what that sample was, you already know what Lenny Williams' voice does to a room. It tells the truth at a volume that makes it impossible to look away. Number 7, Howard Hewett.
Everything's not what it seems.
Imagine you're somewhere in 1982 or 1983. The record is Friends by Shalimar, and there's this voice, this warm, gospel-trained, silk over sandpaper tenor building through A Night to Remember. And if you know that song, you already know why this name is on this list.
Ooh, hey, hey.
Howard Hewett was born in Akron, Ohio in 1955. Raised in the church, trained on gospel before R&B ever entered the picture. He moved to Los Angeles, danced on Soul Train, and in 1979 he walked into a Shalimar audition on a Friday, rehearsed Saturday, flew to New Jersey Sunday, was in front of a television camera performing Monday. That is how fast his career moved the moment it found its footing. And for the next 6 years, Shalimar was one of the biggest R&B groups in the world. The second time around, A Night to Remember, Dead Giveaway, I Can Make You Feel Good, 3 gold albums in the United States, and a global reach that most solo artists never achieve.
But to be without is not his will, no.
When Shalimar broke up in 1985, everyone expected Howard to step directly into solo superstardom. The ceiling was wide open. He came out strong. I'm For Real reached number 2 on R&B in 1986. Show Me reached number 2 on R&B in 1990. His debut solo album was a legitimate commercial success, and multiple hits followed across multiple albums. Soul Tracks described him as one of the most gifted soul vocalists of the post-Marvin Gaye era.
I wanna thank you, God, for giving me one.
That is not a casual statement. That is a musical designation that puts his name in a specific tier. But here's what happened. Howard Hewett consistently outperformed his material. His voice was always bigger than the songs he was given. And in the R&B landscape of the late 1980s and early 1990s, the industry had very specific lanes. And Howard sat in his quietly, delivering extraordinary performances to audiences who knew exactly what they were hearing, while the mainstream machine moved its attention elsewhere. He never got the Luther Vandross treatment, never got the crossover moment that his talent deserved, never got the documentaries.
Give me your son. Now I say.
And I want you to sit with that comparison for a second. Luther Vandross is rightfully one of the most celebrated vocalists in the history of R&B, and Howard Hewett, who has been compared directly to Luther by people who have worked with both of them, remains primarily the answer to a Shalimar trivia question. Some people would say the difference was marketing. Others say timing. I think it was something more fundamental. The industry decided early which names it was going to build mythology around, and Howard's name wasn't on that list.
Sometimes it's very hard to see.
When you hear Howard Hewett sing Say Amen, his gospel offering from his first solo album, you hear a voice that belongs in any conversation about the greatest R&B vocalist who ever recorded, not the greatest overlooked, the greatest, period. And that part of the story still hasn't been corrected. Number 6, Z Hill. In 1982, a journeyman singer from Dallas, Texas, released an album that stayed on the Billboard charts for almost 2 years. Not 2 months, not 6 months, 92 weeks. And the song at the center of it became, by the account of music historians and genre specialists, the most important blues record of the entire decade. It was credited with reviving an entire genre for black audiences. And then he died at 48 years old before the world had finished catching up to what he'd just done. ZZ's Hill was born Arzell Hill in Naples, Texas in 1935. He grew up singing gospel with the Spiritual Five, touring Texas in his teens.
Down home, down home.
And from there, he spent 20 plus years on the Chitlin circuit, small clubs, long highway miles, paycheck to paycheck, recording for Atlantic, Kent, or Columbia, labels that recognized his talent and then failed to put the machine behind it. He didn't quit. That's the thing about ZZ Hill that you have to understand before the rest of the story makes sense. He did not quit. In 1979, he signed with Malaco Records in Jackson, Mississippi. And in 1982, Down Home arrived.
So the night I'm gonna get my head back.
The title track, Down Home Blues, hit the R&B world like a thunderclap. Not just because the groove was right, though it was deeply, effortlessly right, but because it said something that black audiences in post-disco America were genuinely hungry for.
And party with these down home blues.
It brought the blues back to its people, not as nostalgia for another era, as living, breathing, present tense emotional truth. It All Music described his signing with Malaco as a move that resuscitated both his own career and the entire blues genre at large.
Down home.
Think about the weight of that sentence. One record, one voice, and an entire genre breathing again because of it. Down Home Blues didn't just chart, it established the template for what we now call Southern Soul as a commercial force. Every artist that followed on Malaco, every Southern Soul tradition that continues today, traces some part of its lineage back to that album and that voice. ZZ Hill did that. He won Blues Vocalist of the Year in 1984. He was on the road, selling out venues, finally receiving the recognition that 2 decades of hard work had earned him. And then in February 1984, he was in a car accident while touring. His heart didn't recover. He died on April 27, 1984, at 48 years old. And the man who had just revived the blues for a generation never got to see what he'd built become permanent. If you've ever heard Down Home Blues at a fish fry, at a family gathering, late at night when somebody put on the record that meant the most, you felt ZZ Hill's voice move through you. That feeling was earned over 20 years of being overlooked and underpaid, and he finally had the world's full attention for less than 2 years. Then it was gone. Number 5, Billy Paul. Questlove, drummer for The Roots, one of the most serious and serious-minded students of black music alive, called Billy Paul one of the criminally unmentioned proprietors of socially conscious post-revolution 60s civil rights music. And then he put him in the same sentence as Marvin Gaye and Stevie Wonder. Not as an influence on them, not as a footnote beside them, alongside them. Billy Paul was born Paul Williams in Philadelphia in 1934. He grew up in a household full of jazz records. Nina Simone, Ella Fitzgerald, Carmen McRae, Billie Holiday, and that upbringing gave him a vocal phrasing that was distinctly different from most R&B singers of his era. He had jazz intelligence inside a soul voice, a particular sensitivity to silence, to the space between words, and into what you do with a lyric when you really commit to it. Kenny Gamble and Leon Huff at Philadelphia International spent years figuring out how to properly frame that combination. In 1972, they found the answer.
Well, it's time for us to
December 1972, Me and Mrs. Jones hit #1 on both the pop and R&B charts simultaneously. It held #1 for 3 weeks on the Billboard Hot 100 and 4 weeks on the R&B chart. It won Billy Paul the Grammy for Best Male R&B Vocal Performance in 1973.
We got a thing going on.
He beat Ray Charles for that award. He beat Curtis Mayfield. The song sold over 2 million copies and became one of the defining ballads of its decade. A slow, confessional, completely adult song about a love that had no clean resolution. And Billy Paul's voice carried every gram of that weight. Then the follow-up. Gamble and Huff chose Am I Black Enough for You? A politically charged, socially conscious record that most radio programmers in 1973 wouldn't touch. Billy reflected on it later. People weren't ready for that kind of song after the pop success of Mrs. Jones. They were looking for something else.
Mrs. Jones, Mrs.
He was right. And by the time he had his only other top 40 pop hit in 1974, the momentum was gone. The window had closed. Music writer Andrew Hamilton put it plainly. Gamble and Huff did a horrible job picking Paul's singles. Some better choices in his career might have been Hall of Famish. Hall of Famish. That word is doing a tremendous amount of work in a sentence about a Grammy winner who Questlove compared to Marvin Gaye.
Mrs. Jones, Mrs.
Another critic, Jason Ankeny, called Billy too easily dismissed as a one-hit wonder when he was actually one of the most gifted and affecting talents to grace the Philadelphia International stable. Billy Paul died in April 2016 and never received the Hall of Fame moment that level of talent demanded.
We both know that it's wrong.
You've heard Me and Mrs. Jones. Everyone has heard Me and Mrs. Jones. And whether you know it from the original or from covers or from that moment in a movie or at a wedding, you know there is something in that voice that understands something. Not just about that particular situation, about the weight of wanting something complicated. Billy Paul put every one of those feelings into a performance that still hits decades later, and the world called it a one-hit wonder. Some of y'all know better than that. Number 4, Deniece Williams. A writer at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette once wrote that Deniece Williams had the kind of range that would make Mariah Carey quiver. The New York Times described her live performance as a spectacular vocal display, featuring a voice that soared effortlessly to E-flat above high C. And academics who study the history of black vocal performance put her upper register in the same conversation as Minnie Riperton, the singer widely considered to possess the most extraordinary natural soprano range in R&B history. Here's the question I keep coming back to. When was the last time you heard someone describe Deniece Williams the way people describe Mariah Carey? She was born June Denise Chandler in Gary, Indiana in 1950. Same city, same era as Michael Jackson's childhood. She grew up singing in church, developing a 4-octave soprano that her choir directors genuinely didn't know what to do with. She went to college briefly, worked at a hospital, worked at a telephone company, sang part-time in clubs until Stevie Wonder heard what she was doing. And then she became part of Wonderlove, Stevie's live and studio backing group. She sang on Talking Book, on Fulfilling This' first finale, on Songs in the Key of Life. Let that settle for a moment. Those are not ordinary records. They are 3 of the most analyzed, most revered, most beloved albums in the history of American music, and Deniece Williams' voice is woven through all three of them. Morris White of Earth, Wind and Fire recognized what he was hearing and signed her to his production company. In 1976, her debut single, Free, hit number 2 on the R&B chart. It was the first entry in a run that would include Silly, It's Gonna Take a Miracle, and then in 1984, Let's Hear It for the Boy from the Footloose soundtrack, which went to number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100. 4 Grammy wins, 12 nominations, a career that touched every era of R&B and soul for over 4 decades. And through all of it, she never had the cultural footprint that her voice deserved, because her voice was not simply good or great. It was extraordinary in a technical and emotional sense that very few human beings have ever possessed. The New York Times noted that she soared to a note that trained classical sopranos spend years working toward. Mark Anthony Neal, a Duke University professor of Black popular culture, described her upper register as a direct parallel to Minnie Riperton, not similar to, a parallel to. Here's the part that always moves something in me. Minnie Riperton died young, heartbreakingly, tragically young, and she is rightly and permanently celebrated as one of the vocal miracles of R&B history. Her legacy is protected, but Deniece Williams, who specialists place at the same level and sometimes higher, gets asked about Footloose. If you've ever been in a room when Deniece Williams' voice came fully through the speakers, on Free, on Silly, anywhere she was really singing, and you watch someone who doesn't cry suddenly get very quiet, you already understand everything I'm trying to say. That is a gift that comes along a few times in a generation, and we very nearly missed it entirely. Number 3, Johnnie Taylor. In 1976, the Recording Industry Association of America created the platinum certification for the very first time. Not just for R&B, not just for soul, for any artist in any genre across the entire history of the American recording industry. And the first single to ever receive that certification, the very first platinum record in history, belonged to a man from Crawfordsville, Arkansas, who had started his career replacing Sam Cooke. Johnnie Taylor was born in 1934, grew up singing gospel in Arkansas and Kansas City. He found his way to the Highway QCs, one of the top gospel quartets in the country, and then to the Soul Stirrers, one of the most revered gospel groups in American music. Lord, I miss you, girl. You dance so fine. And when Sam Cooke, his closest friend in the industry, his mentor, the man who would eventually sign him to his first secular label, left the Soul Stirrers to pursue pop music, Johnnie Taylor was the one chosen to step in and take his place as lead vocalist. He literally sang from the same pulpit as Sam Cooke, to the same congregations, in the same tradition. And then Cooke was killed in December 1964. In a single night, Taylor lost his label, his mentor, and his closest professional relationship. He went to Memphis, signed with Stax Records, and rebuilt from the beginning. Who's Making Love went to number 1 R&B in 1968. I Believe in You, You Believe in Me went to number 1 R&B in 1973. Stax executive Al Bell called him the philosopher of soul. And then Stax went bankrupt in 1975, and Taylor had to start over again for the second time. He signed with Columbia. And in 1976, He recorded Disco Lady, a track that was somehow simultaneously completely of its cultural moment and entirely outside the genre it was marketed within. Taylor himself said later, "A lot of people thought it was disco. It was not a disco tune. We were just talking about disco." It reached #1 on the Billboard Hot 100 for 4 weeks and #1 on R&B for 6 weeks. And it became the very first single in history to receive RIAA Platinum certification, selling over 2 million copies. Johnny Taylor reportedly took a bath in Dom Perignon to celebrate, and then the industry moved on. He never had another top 10 pop hit. The same label that handed him that historic milestone pushed him toward more disco material instead of letting him be what he was, one of the most versatile, emotionally honest soul voices in American history. After a complicated run through the late 70s and early 80s, he eventually landed at Malaco Records, the same label as ZZ Hill, and spent the last decade of his career making deep Southern soul and blues records for an audience that had never stopped knowing who he was. In 1999, the year before he died, Johnny Taylor recorded a song called Soul Heaven, a dream of a concert in the afterlife where all the greats were performing together. He named Sam Cooke, Jimi Hendrix, Louis Armstrong. He was imagining the room he had always deserved to stand in. He died in May 2000. And in that room, the real one, he absolutely belonged. #1, Bettye LaVette. I know it's all over. She made her first record at the age of 16 in 1962. The same year, Aretha Franklin was recording for Columbia, the same era that produced the voices we still call the greatest, and Bettye LaVette had every bit of the talent those voices had. Her producer, Steve Jordan, the man who has worked with the Rolling Stones, with Bob Dylan, with the best of the best, described her voice as a combination of Frank Sinatra, Billie Holiday, and Miles Davis. Not one of them, all three simultaneously. And Keith Richards played guitar on her recordings. That is not a thing that happens by accident. Bettye LaVette was born Betty Jo Haskins on January 29th, 1946 in Muskegon, Michigan, and raised in Detroit. She didn't come from church the way most soul singers did. She came from her parents' living room, from R&B and country and Western records, and a household that made space for all of it. At 16, she recorded My Man, He's a Lovin' Man for Atlantic Records, and it reached the R&B top 10 in late 1963. She was touring with Clyde McPhatter, Benny King, and a young rising star named Otis Redding. The room she was in was the Wright room. Everything should have happened from there, and then it didn't. Atlantic shelved her follow-up singles. She moved to smaller labels. She kept recording, kept performing, but the hits that should have come didn't come. In 1972, Atlantic finally recorded a full album with her, a complete finished record, and then they shelved that too. It sat in a vault for 28 years. A French label released it in 2000. By then, Bettye LaVette had been singing for 4 decades with almost nothing to show for it commercially, despite being one of the greatest interpreters of a song who had ever picked up a microphone. She kept going. She told herself she was still a star, even when the industry refused to confirm it. I know it's all over. She said publicly later, I started off with a hit record, so it always stayed with me that I was a star. And when they wouldn't treat me like one, it was very frustrating. She wasn't wrong about herself. She was just in a business that made a habit of failing the people it should have protected. In 2005, she signed with Anti Records and released I've Got My Own Hell to Raise, an album of songs written entirely by women, produced by Joe Henry. The reviews were extraordinary. Every major publication named it among the best albums of the year. And then, because Bettye LaVette's story cannot have a clean moment without a complication, the label failed to submit it to the Recording Academy in time for Grammy consideration. A clerical error, a paperwork failure. The album that should have ended her 43-year wait for official recognition didn't get submitted. She said her friends called it her buzzard luck. She kept going. The next album was nominated for a Grammy. The one after that, she sang for President-elect Barack Obama at the inaugural concert in January 2009. She performed A Change Is Gonna Come, Sam Cooke's song, the song that Johnny Taylor's mentor had made into an anthem for the incoming leader of the country. She was 63 years old. We promised that we'd still be. She finally received the Pioneer Awards, the Hall of Fame recognitions, critical reverence she had always deserved. She said in one of the most precise and heartbreaking sentences in the history of this music, "I've been waiting for them to call for 60 years. They finally found my number." Here's what I want you to understand about Bettye LaVette. The legends we know, the ones who got the monuments and the tribute nights, they had talent. Real talent. Extraordinary talent, but they also had timing. They had labels that believed in them at the right moment. They had the door open when they arrived. Say hello once in a while. Bettye LaVette had the talent. She had it at 16 and she still had it at 70. What she didn't have was a single person at a single critical moment making the decision that this voice deserved to be heard the way it deserved to be heard. She outplayed every obstacle the industry put in front of her for 60 years. She is still here, and she is still, in the opinion of everyone who has listened carefully enough, one of the finest voices and one of the greatest interpreters of a song who ever stood in front of a microphone.